Hi, and it's so nice to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, fine, fine. And you see, oftentimes, and I love to thank my guest for two things. Firstly, thank you so very much and for investing in yourself. You see, you being on the show today is as a result of you investing in yourself. And oftentimes, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, I was passing by that road, a particular road, and I came across a mango tree. And this mango tree didn't really catch my attention like that. Why? Because it's got no fruit on it. And I just walked past it. But just recently, I was on that same road, and this time around, I sighted the mango tree from afar. And I got this urge to move closer and, take a good look. And when I got closer, and I was wowed because now it's got a lot of mangoes on it and it looks so beautiful and so attractive that I couldn't even take my eyes off it. The point is, the fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming who you are today, it attracted me that I couldn't take my eyes off the things I was seeing. It's a beautiful stuff. That's why I sent you the request to be on the show. So thank you so very much and for investing in yourself. That's a good one. And secondly, thank you for honoring the invite. You see, I truly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Okay, let's get started. And I am quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. All right. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking, because I believe in order to transition from a chaotic situation to that of a beautiful one, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very, very important to me and even to the listeners. Now, the second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Anne on the show is for the sake of the listeners. You see, Anne, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got a lot of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality stuff. And that's why when I came across your profile, I was excited because I believe our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So for that reason, Anne, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. You're just so curious, want to know how you got here. And afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, and over to you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so beautiful, the intro. I love it. It's so interesting because oftentimes I get the intro of like, this is her CV and let's go and let's talk. And I think it's so nice to just connect a bit differently, right? Like it sets the tone for the whole show and the whole podcast. So thanks for that. And yeah, gosh, I think personal and professional for me actually go together. I'm an advocate of living my work, if you will. So basically, I went from the pro soccer world into becoming an osteopath. In an osteopath, we tend to look at all the systems of the body. And so at that time in my life, I was very analytical, very, like you said, information driven. I want all the facts, I want all the studies, I want, everything that's going to heal people. And so this was my journey, much because I needed to heal myself. And that's, I think, how it always works for people. It just shows up differently in their lives. And so, I went on this journey of working in the pro sport world and then, working with a lot of people through their chronic pain. And I came to a few realizations. One, I eliminated my chronic pain from my body, which was great. After two heavy duty knee surgeries, I was told I'd always walk with a limp. And I'm going to say, I'm not even going to say mind over matter. I'm going to say belief and then encompassing the belief in the body over matter. Because it's a lot more than just our minds, right? It's how we encompass our energy, it's our belief systems, it's our attitudes, it's our actions we take. It's not just the mind. So a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I have to change my mindset." And yeah, that's a part of it. But, I think that's thinking a little bit small because I used to have the mindset part in the pro soccer world. Just do better, just do better. But then I realized that as a part of my osteo journey, I went down another rabbit hole of saying, okay, osteo, I have the body part, I have the mind part. And then there was this other part that I think I was missing. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get into genetics. If I go down to the basis of genetics, I've got it all. I can help everybody. Well, that's not even true because, what happens is what I realized on that studying journey was that people express their genes based on the environment they're in. And then based on their perceived environment, they'll express an attitude like I just spoke about. So Anne can walk with a limp or without a limp. There's no genetic part of that. And then people say, okay, well, my whole family has cancer, so I'm bound to get cancer. I'm going to tell them, well, that's your belief system. Your environment, what I learned the most on this whole journey is that the environment you're in is going to dictate what you decide to express. Okay. So for example, I'll just give you this beautiful example of how I'm feeling in this moment, if you don't mind. I've been on loads of podcasts and it's so interesting to me how people intro. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels stressful, right? Because it's like, okay, let's get all this information out and so on. And then you introed and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so calm. Thank you. So like this interview, right? It's the environment that we set up for ourselves, for one another, and then how I perceive it. So I'm perceiving this situation now as like, oh, well, this is relaxing and is calm. So I'm not creating a stress response in my body right now. I'm not feeling overwhelmed. I'm not giving myself, all the cortisol and adrenaline that I need to get through life. So at the end of the day, we talk about fight or flight responses, which is important. But what it comes down to is your patterns of living. So how you've been programmed between ages 0 and 7, and then how you live that programming out for the rest of your life. And that was my big kicker because people will make choices that put them in pain for the rest of their life because they might think they need to prove themselves. They might think that they need to achieve something to feel satisfied or successful. It all comes down to some kind of belief system or some kind of living system. And so what I've gotten into is helping people reprogram that in themselves. So someone will come into the clinic with pain. Okay, great. You have lower back pain. But let's sort out the lower back pain now as much as we can. But let's look deeper into yourself of why you got there in the first place. And this to me is actually medicine. I'm going to say it and I'm going to say something even a little bit deeper that people might be like, oh gosh, she's riding the edge. I actually don't believe chronic disease needs to exist on the planet. And so that's, the path that I'm on right now is actually talking about it because people say, oh, chronic disease is the highest in the world and so on. So there's all these stats, but who's talking about eliminating it? And how are we helping our people actually eliminate it? It's through our programming that we need to eliminate it. So in a way, personal and professional, I live it as much as possible. And then I help other people live it. And that's really what's brought me on my journey.
Amazing, Anne. You see, within 8 minutes, you've shared some very vital information, and I feel really blessed right now. That part where you mentioned that someone may have in their family, maybe they used to have cancer, and the person say, I can't escape it, I'm definitely going to have cancer too. And now you respond and say, that's your belief system. This is a new thing to me now because the perception about the stuff that I've been used to is whatever it is that is happening in your family is definitely not going to change on your own time or when it gets to you. So now getting to understand that all of these things has to do with one's belief system. That's amazing. And you also mentioned the environment. Wow, man, I love it. You see,
Well, out of curiosity, let's find something out. Where's your family's heritage from? Where do you come from?
whoa, okay, Africa. Yeah,
Okay, what part of Africa? Do you know?
and that's western part of Africa, Nigeria.
Okay. So let's just take an example of Nigeria, and maybe you can paint a picture for your viewers of how. Now, did you grow up there out of curiosity, or did your parents grow up there or grandparents? What was the
Agree with
You grew up
that.
there.
That's right.
So what was your perception based on growing up in Nigeria versus where you live now? What are the differences to you out of curiosity?
Okay, can you repeat that? I didn't get that. network program.
What are the differences of you growing up in Nigeria versus where you live now? Like, what there's gotta be some environmental differences,
Yeah, there is.
right?
Yeah, that's
Like
right. Hmm.
like
Let
food,
to be
like
here.
how people.
Yeah, culture. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So let's talk about culture for a second. This is a big one. And I actually just did a podcast with a lady from South Africa, and we were talking about her speaking Zulu, which was interesting. Then she came over to the US, and she said, in Zulu, they don't really have words in a way for like depression. Like they don't really talk about that. They don't have a word for it. So she's like, we didn't really know about it until she came to the US and everyone's talking about depression. And I said, well, depression can be another word for sadness. And she, oh, okay, I get it. And I said, well, how do you guys deal with your sadness? And she said, we openly cry to each other. We'll sit there, we'll cry about it, we'll let out the energy, and we have awareness about it. And she said, I feel supported through my sadness and nobody judges me for it. But then she comes over to America and she says, I'm not really allowed to express my sadness. It gets judged and nobody actually really knows how to deal with it. And I said, well, that's a huge difference right there, because the fact is the energy that you're holding on to and you're suppressing in the body and keep suppressing it. And that's kind of on a North American front of what we're taught to do. And even in the UK, and I lived in the New Zealand, and it's the exact same. I lived in Australia, it's the exact same. I think people are evolving out of it, but they're taught to suppress and to swallow and not to show. And this is creating sickness in the body because it has to live somewhere. And this will create some kind of gene expression of sickness, anger, sadness, if you want to call it depression, however you see it is fine. Anxiety, all of it is going to create an expression that someone doesn't want. So what does society do? They say, everyone has this. Okay. So we're getting programmed in a way, and I'm going to put it out there that all of this stuff exists. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's like in our faces all the time. You walk everywhere and we see mental health. So I think it's a good conversation to have. But then we're saying, okay, well, everyone needs help with their mental health. And I'm going to tell people they really have to start going within themselves to create those mental health changes. I'm wondering, where you come from, it probably looks a little bit different on how people deal with their mental well-being. And where I am, coming from, it's totally different on how we deal with our mental well-being and so on. So again, it comes down to our programming and the environment that you're living in that's going to influence how you're going to express yourself over a certain period of time. Does that make sense?
A lot. Now I get it firmly. I get it now. I get it now. That's amazing. When I get to learn something new, I feel really excited. And thank you for sharing this stuff with us. And okay, let's talk about quantum wave living. I don't know if I pronounced the quantum well, but just help us, please.
Yeah. So I got into studying this method. I'm going to call it a method. Everyone likes to toss out this word quantum these days. And I was in probably every flipping course you could be in that had quantum titling to it, but I didn't quite understand it. So I spent the last, gosh, probably 5 years now. Yeah, I'm coming up on my 5th year studying with my teacher who actually understands the physics of this. And now I think I just want to prelude and say, before all the physicists, jump on me, and before all the neuroscience scientists jump on me, because I've had people give me feedback, and I don't think we fully understand everything that a human's capable of. I just want to prelude and say this. So I'm going to talk about how I understand based on where I'm at now and based on my journey through this. So I had told you that I'd kind of thought I'd solved every issue of understanding the human body at genetics. It wasn't true. And so the genetics part, like I said, is about your environment and how you express and so on. But there's a special word for that. It's called epigenetics. So how you're expressing yourself in your environment. Epi means above, and genetics is you. So everything above and around you. And so I understood that originally as, okay, this is just our environment on planet Earth, right? Well, no, because when I got into the quantum wave living method, what I understood was when we break down DNA, it is electrons. So we're actually energy. Okay. Some people call it light. Some people call it energy. Some people call us source. Everyone has their own words for it, and that's totally fine. Okay. So I'll call it energy for the time being. And then I went a bit further and said, okay, an electron spins twice and sends out a pulsating wave of energy. Where does that wave go? Like what? And so I went out and said, well, gosh, it interacts with source. So I'm going to say again, source can be your God, it can be the universe, it can be source, it can be an energy of whatever you believe in. Okay. So a global energy or universal energy, if you will. And we're always interacting with that source. Okay. So our electromagnetic fields are pulsating out a wave of energy, interacting with the universe or source, and then we're receiving back an energy. Okay. Because energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only ever be exchanged. So then I thought, okay, that's interesting. So, really, with that theory, our bodies and beings can exchange out anything and create something new. Just like our skin, our skin, someone might have like an acne spot, right? It heals over time. We're constantly exchanging to make ourselves new. So we do it already. We just might not have the awareness of how capable we're of doing anything for ourselves. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take this one step further. And this is where I'd met my teacher. And I said, well, how far can we go with this? And she said, infinite, because the universe is infinite. And I said, okay, well, what a great concept, but how do we do this? How do you exchange out your old patterns for something new? How can you exchange out who you think you are in your personality for something new? Because what people get fixated on is the fact that it always has to be this way. Well, it's just me. That's how I am. Not true. It's actually the fact you can morph. You might not going to change your eye color, for example, but you can morph energy out and create something new, which means you can transfer out disease or how even you're managing the disease and create something new in your body. Because when you create a new electromagnetic field response in your body, you create a different cellular response. So your genes express differently. And I'm not trying to get too techie on people, but that's the really simple way of how I'm understanding this. So, for example, I had someone come into the clinic with complete migraines their whole life. And I'll take you back to exactly what it was for him. So, he'd gone through the professional sporting world, he'd had many accidents, lower back pain, headaches, migraines. And he said, the only way I can manage them is if I get, physical work done on my body, like massage and osteo and things like that. I said, okay, great. And so, he'd been to all these practitioners, and I said, well, do you want to exchange out the patterns that you're stuck in your body that's helping you, keep this pain? And he said, why not? I said, okay. So there's a certain method that I walk people through of saying, what pattern is he living he's holding on to this pain for? And I do it through muscle testing. But generally what it does is it walks them back to their childhood. And his particular pattern was completely judging himself and believing he had to live a certain life to feel love. And that pattern led him through all of these paths of having to try to prove himself in sport to feel love. Okay. And so, no one would really get that from our mainstream medicine world because they're looking up us topically, not energetically. And so the energy and the pattern he was carrying was totally unconscious. He didn't even know it. We found it together. He's like, oh my gosh, I totally live like that. And then what we got to do is exchange all those patterns out. So we went through every part of his life where he was constantly reliving this pattern. He goes, oh my gosh, I was living at 7, I was living at 15, I was living it at 22. And then I got in a car accident, I was living it there too. And like all this kind of stuff. I said, okay, let's exchange it all out. And, over, 7 or 8 hours of work, it does take time and it does take inner work and that self-awareness that doesn't come instantly. He exchanged out his migraine patterns and hasn't had a migraine since. So the energy that he was living no longer exists because he chose something new. So when he chooses something new, he heals himself. And that's a recent story that I had. I have loads of stories like that. Yeah.
Amazing, man. Oh, man. You see,
Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah,
We're so powerful.
really, I do. Wow, it's amazing. I tell you, these discoveries are really, really amazing. Wow. Okay, I love what you're doing, man, and keep it up. You see, and that makes you one of the very important asset to planet Earth. You see, if this planet is able to talk and just say a few words, I'm very sure the planet will say something like, Brittany Ann, she's doing a great job. I love that. I love what you do.
Well, I can add on to that because the last thing I want to say in that is not only are we connected to source in the universe, but even every one of your listeners, they gotta believe and understand that they're a unique individual. Like you and I, we've never had the same experiences on the planet. So my whole thing is why compete? Like, let's build community instead of competing. I have a whole conversation about that with people. But my thing is like no one on this planet's built the same, and no one's had the two same experiences that are the same on this planet. Even twins on the planet will view their life experiences differently. And that's, been proven in studies. So that's fine. So, what I want your listeners to leave with today is like understanding that they have a unique individual purpose, and their unique individual purpose is theirs to live. And when they live it and they believe in themselves and they empower themselves, they start to change community. We all want the same things at the end of the day. We all want peace on earth. We all want love. We all want community. We all want, the safety and security of living. We all want these things, right? But we won't get it until we actually believe we are it. And that's why that repatterning to purpose, which I help people with, totally exchanges that. And then they show up differently in their community to provide differently. And I wouldn't have understood that if I hadn't done it for myself. And I think that's been my personal biggest journey is like, how do I want to show up for my community? How do I want to show up for the world? Like you said, how do I want to interact with planet? Well, yeah, what would planet Earth say to me right now? And planet Earth would tell everybody to live their purpose, to live their unique individual purpose. Yeah.
I tell you, that's so right. And that's my talk, you see, purpose, because I believe everyone is created to fulfill a particular assignment. And like you mentioned, we all want the same thing. We all want that, I think you call it utopia, that perfect life, that perfect world. I get it. So that's a beautiful word. And for folks who would like to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, or even join your programs, how can that be possible?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. www.lifelift.live is my website. Believe it or not, I just joined social media. People are going to be like, what? It wasn't really my main, way of communicating in the beginning. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube. And I'll repost this on YouTube and everything for your viewers as well. So they can find me at lifelift.live. And I think lifelift.community is our Instagram handle. But, what I want to say to people is I do some one-on-one work. They'll have to connect through socials to find that because I only take on about 6 people a month. It's deep work, But I am running a coaches and practitioner program now. This is new coming out February 2025. And I've been asked to do it for years, and I hadn't felt comfortable because I didn't know how I was going to deliver it well. And now I finally have a formula after running 10 practitioners through. I'm like, okay, this is going to work for people, and this is how I can support them to make them understand it and incorporate it in their business or whatever. Or even if they want to just even start coaching this, that's totally fine. And I think that's probably what your viewers might kind of jump into is this practitioner coaches program is so supportive. And I'm a firm believer of living what you teach. And so if they come into it, they're not only going to go through their own patterns, because in order to recognize others, we got to do the work on ourselves first. And that's really how I'm teaching this. Is it's not like, okay, you go out and fix the world. No, no, no. You come in and you sort yourself out and understand yourself, and then you'll be able to see it and support it in others. And that's how that practitioner coaches program is being delivered, which I think is the best way of doing it. And so people can apply and join in, and they'll meet me because I meet everybody who comes in beforehand. I just want to make sure I'm setting up the right group, and off we go. So that's what I'm doing.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. That's a good one. So that's going to be the end of the show. And thank you for coming. Man, you see, I would have to listen to our conversation over and over again because you shared some things in it that I really don't want to miss at all. So thank you so very much for coming and thank you for sharing this amazing stuff with us. It means a whole lot. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.